Hi guys, welcome to anatomy lesson 7.02 over the anatomy of a muscle cell. And what we're doing is we're slow walking our way up to understanding how the physiology of how muscle cells contract. But we've got a lot of terms and a lot of background information that we need to get established. And so that's what we're trying to do here. So if I mention things like myofibrils, actin, myosin, T-tubules, you know what all those good things are. So we're just going to kind of work our way down these labels. And right away, we said in a previous video, when you've talked about cells, you look like that, and it might have a nucleus, and then there's some, organelles, maybe a mitochondria, maybe some ribosomes, assuming it's a eukaryotic cell. Well, this is a cross section of a muscle cell, which is also called, and I'm going to write it in red because you guys should start tallying how many times I tell you a muscle cell is the same thing as a muscle fiber. Muscle fiber, AKA. So that's what letter A is showing us. It has this circle around the whole thing. So we're saying this whole thing is a muscle cell. MUSCLE. And if we're being specific, we'd have to say skeletal. So we probably want to put here skeletal muscle cell. Because a cardiac muscle cell and a smooth muscle cell look different, and we know this from back in our tissues chapters. Well, on to the other things we said in our tissues chapters. If it's not already color-coded, I'm going to go ahead and color-code it. So you'll notice that B is purple. I'm going to choose light purple as my label. And that we have more than one of these. So this is a cross-section. Here's another one up here. Here's another one down here. And hopefully you remember from our tissues chapter that muscle cells are multinucleated. So B is a nuclei. And I put nuclei because that's the plural for nucleus. There are many. And remember, this muscle cell goes on and on and on. This is a cross section. So let's add that too. Let's add, this is a cross section. What they've done here then is they've cut the cell membranes away to reveal what lies underneath. And you'll notice I said membranes. That was on purpose. And we're going to skip C and D because we're going to learn in the next video. Down here, letter G, we have a whole circle. And we talked about in the last video the fact that we have a muscle. The muscle is made up of parts called fascicles, and those are bundled together. A fascicle is made up of a bunch of muscle fibers bundled together. A muscle fiber is a bunch of these guys bundled together, and these guys here, so here you're seeing one in cross section. Here they're showing you all the way around. This is a myofibril. Since we're talking about the last video, I thought so letter G is a myofibril. And here we have H. We have thin single protein strands. So a myofibril is made of all of these individual protein strands that are grouped together. Now this is the thicker, and H is the thinner, and it's a little bit hard to tell on your slide maybe, but the thinner we know is called actin, and the thicker we know is called myosin. So this is basically just a review of the fact that we have a muscle fiber. In that muscle fiber, we have myofibrils. So I can count a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 myofibrils, 9, 10, 11 myofibrils in this muscle fiber. And then if you look at each one of these, there's probably like what, 20 or 30 actin and 20 and 30 myosin. So the next video, 703, is just the anatomy of these myofibrils because they're complicated too. And what we're going to see is that letter C is going to be called the A band. We're not going to talk about that at all now because that'll be later. And D is called the I band. And then do you notice this zigzag line? That's called the Z line. And again, this is all going to be in 703. It's the next video. So we're just going to label them, but we're not going to discuss them. All right, letter F, which is on this slide, is orange. I see it two ways. So here is one and here's the other. And if you can see the inside of these, they look like they have zigzags. Well, that's the surefire tip-off for a mitochondria. And it's not just one mitochondria. Holy cow, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Just in this little tiny cross section, I can count 11 mitochondria. And the truth is, our skeletal muscle have lots. So skeletal muscle have a lot of mitochondria. Contraction takes a lot. If you remember, the mitochondria, what's its whole job? Well, its job is to make ATP, and skeletal muscle needs a whole lot of that. And we're going to see why about 3 videos from now. So we're doing some foreshadowing. Okay, N and M, it's difficult to see what you're looking at. We have 2 membranes, and what they've done is they've tried to peel them. So for N, this is the inside membrane, and then they've tried to peel back M as the outer membrane. So N is the inner membrane, and M is the outer. You can see it over here too. So there's that inner one peeking through, and there's the outer one. They don't do a very good job of showing you the 2 membranes though. Well, remember we said back in the last video that a whole muscle fiber is wrapped by a membrane called the endomysium. And so this big yellow structure that we see is the endomysium. And what we have peeking out here then is the regular cell membrane. It also has a cell membrane. I'd write that in yellow, but it wouldn't show up for the endomysium. All right, that leaves us with, I'm not sure what J is supposed to be. We'll just cross that off. So let's go up here and let's start with I. And if you look at I is pointing to, and that's in blue, this structure, and it looks like the webbing you'd see in the bottom of a kitchen drawer or some kind of a netting that they use to hold rugs down. This is the equivalent of this whole structure, IJ, I, K, and L, of the endoplasmic reticulum. But it looks very different from the endoplasmic reticulums you've seen on your typical eukaryotic cell drawings. So we have not only the webbing, but it's kind of wraps around the entire structure. And if you see here, these little blue dots, those are the reticulum cross section. Now we said in the last video that there was a word for muscle. So we use the word myo as meaning muscle. And one of these terms that we're going to talk about is Greek and one is Latin. Don't ask me which is which. But the other term for muscle is sarco. Sarco and myo both mean muscle. And so this isn't the endoplasmic reticulum. I is pointing to the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum. So this webbing moves, structures or substances are going to move through the webbing into these, actually, I said that backwards. It's going to start here at the purple, and there's actually flow this way and flow this way, but let's label these and we'll talk about them. All right, K I'm going to do in darker purple because K is referring to these thicker tubes that you have here. And the term for those are terminal cisternae. A cistern is a structure they used in olden times to hold water. So they would hook up their eaves and their rain catchers, and they would funnel water into a cistern under the house, which was a big stone container. And a lot of you, if you have older homes, have cisterns in your homes, and maybe you don't realize it. Maybe they got covered over. So the terminal cisterns or terminal cisternae, instead of storing water, they store calcium. They store calcium. And usually what'll happen is we'll have movement here in these purple, and then it'll hit these, and these will release calcium, and that'll cause a chain reaction. So these three pieces work in hand with each other, and we're going to see how later. All right, we've got these purple structures, and this time I'm going to use dark purple. And notice that they have these little struts that come out. So here's one that's not cut. You can see, but everywhere it goes, it's got these little branches that come off. And these look like the letter T. So these are called T tubules. T tubules. All right, so what are our takeaways? Well, we find that a muscle cell is actually a pretty complicated structure. Some of the things are the same, like mitochondria, where we're making ATP, but it sure doesn't look like this. You know, this was our typical eukaryotic cell. So we have these things called myofibrils. And by the way, let's add too that these are all myofibril structures. So these are all myofibril structures. The actin and the myosin are all part of the myofibril, and that's its own video. We have two membranes. We have the endomysium, and we have the cell membrane. And then we've got this funky sarcoplasmic reticulum with these T tubules and terminal cisternae. Now, I highly recommend that you memorize this stuff as we go, because by the time we get to muscle physiology, and we're talking about calcium flowing, the nerve impulse triggering something in the T tubules that flows into the terminal cisternae and causes the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release such a substance. If you don't know what these terms are and you're still trying to kind of fumble around in your memory banks, you're going to get lost very quickly. So memorizing as we go is a huge help in this chapter. And let's go on to the next video where we're talking about the structure of a myofibril. Thanks for watching.